I know you hate the positionless thing. I don't know if it's
I detest it.
Okay, well, go ahead then, because I'm not sure. I feel like it's unfair, but there's also parts of me in certain results of other years. I'm like, why does this guy get to be at All NBA when he's clearly not one of the 15 best players in the NBA? But go ahead.
First of all, we have an MVP ballot that basically decides who the most valuable 5 guys were of the year, and that's positionless, right? So if we're looking, my whole goal with this award stuff is it should be a snapshot of the season, right? No different than how the Oscars should work on paper, how the Emmys, like why that's one of the reasons the Oscars has so many flaws. It's not a good snapshot. It doesn't pay attention to popcorn and comedy and action. It just is only this one specific type of movie making. Emmys does a little bit of a better job, but for the most part, if we're trying to do a snapshot, and I always go back to like when I was doing my book, and I don't know what's going on in 1962, and you could patch together and you can watch different tapes. One of the things I really liked was they all had to decide, all right, who's the best center? Who are the best 2 guards? Who back in the day, there were only 2 teams. Who are the best 4 guards in the season? Now we're throwing that away, and I'm not really sure why, other than it was because Embiid finished second team last year and people got upset about it. Like, this seems to be the most reactive to Twitter and Reddit of anything the NBA has ever done. I think there were easy solutions to it too. I wish somebody had asked me. Like, why can't you just have, you can have a semi-positionless, you make sure you have 1 big and 1 pure guard and leave the other 3 spots open. At least that's more of a reflection. My thing with these teams is it should at least somewhat look like a basketball team. That was the whole reason they did that in the first place. Was a guard, 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a center, right? And that's how basketball was played a million years ago. And it's changed a little bit, but for the most part, everybody's got a big and a guard. And then you might have a Celtics situation where you might have Tatum and Brown and Brogdon and Derek White are all playing together with a center. Maybe they might even go small. But for the most part, there's a guard and a big, and then the other 3 can kind of come and go. Now it's like, all right, so we're going to have a first team All NBA and it's going to be 5 guards because those were the 5 best players. That's idiotic. I don't get it. I don't understand.
So it's not like our all-star ballots where you have to pick 2 backcourt and 3 frontcourt.
Even if they had done some version of that, 2 backcourt, 2 frontcourt, wild card, even that. But I don't know, man. We did this for 75 years. We talked about this last year. Every year it was like Russell or Chamberlain. Pick one. Who is the best player? Who's the first team center? In the early 2000s, KG, Duncan, Dirk, C-Webb, who were the best 2 forwards, and people figured it out. And then you can go back and you can look at 01, you can look at 02, 03, and if you were one of the best 2 forwards in 01, 02, 03, you were fucking really good because it was a forward-dominated league. Now you would have 01, it would be Shaq, Kobe, and 3 forwards. Is that good? I don't like it. I really feel like they overreacted to the Embiid Jokic thing. Shit happens. You're going to have years where you got to pick one or the other. That's the whole point of having 100 voters and having a choice, Do
you think it's about the Embiid thing? Because look, the Embiid campaigning has been going on now for 2 straight years. There was another guy who called us out again by, it's like this idea that anybody that voted for Jokic last year is a fucking idiot with all these biases. And then when Daryl called all of us out for not voting Embiid in the All-Star game, when all of us from Boston actually did vote him to be a starter,
that was great.
Daryl was like fucking 0 for 6 on his argument.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know if like people felt so bad for Embiid about the whole thing. I don't know if that's what happened because I don't know, man. It feels a lot like, I think I've made the point too where I would get to the 3rd team and I'd be like, why am I putting this guy at center when he's so not a top 15 player in the NBA? And that's
the argument against it. That year where it's like the DeAndre Jordan, Andre Drummond year. Yeah. I get it, but maybe you could get a little more expansive with the concept of a big. But I also feel like we have so many good centers now. Like, look at the ballot this year. We already know who the 3 All-NBA centers are going to be. Sabonis is going to be 3rd team. Like, if he's not, it's a crime. But Lopez and Bam would have been good backup choices for the center spot. I don't know. That like this year, there's more good guards than forwards for whatever reason. So does that mean we're going to have 9 guys? If we had done this system this year, there'd be 9 guards this year and like 3-4 forwards, Jaylen Brown and Markkanen and guys like that are just out because people want to put in Dame Lillard and Curry. I wanted to at least look like a basketball team to some degree, and I just feel like they punted it. It's not just about feeling bad for Embiid. It was about the whole concept of people didn't like that the number 1 and number 2 MVP choices couldn't both be on the first team All-NBA. That was the root of all this. But that's why we have the MVP ballot. And that's why we can look every year and you can look at who the best 5 guys in the league were, really the top 10 based on the MVP voting. And it's a really good snapshot of who mattered. And the All-NBA teams were a snapshot of it was a little more position-centric. So I don't know. I agree that the concept of positions have changed a little bit. And maybe, maybe there's some new way to think about them. But this wasn't it, in my opinion.
I'm okay with it. But you make a good point about the center depth this year as opposed to other years where when we would look at it, we would go over it. Again, I didn't have a vote back then, but I would just be like, I just don't feel comfortable writing this person down as one of the 15 best players. But traditionally with the position stuff, it is kind of cool to go back and look at it. But I mean, imagine if football decided, all right, we're just going to do the top 11 guys in the AFC for all pro.
That's what this is.
So no guard, we've got 1 tackle, 7 receivers, 3 quarterbacks. So if you argue it that way, it makes it look worse. But, I'm sure the pushback would be, well, that's ridiculous. But I don't know. If we end up having 4 guards and a forward or 5 guards or something, because that's the Lillard thing. I don't blame him for saying, hey, I should be all NBA this year. He's not going to play enough games and the team stunk. And just as an aside, I'm fucking good for about a year on Lillard updates. All right. I'm good. I've gotten about 30 different Lillard updates on stories in about 2 weeks. We got it. He's awesome.
He's definitely overcovered.
He's had an awesome year. And by the way, it's not going to go away for a year because it's going to happen all summer. And who knows, something big could happen with it. But yeah, I don't know. The football argument makes the basketball one. But I guess when I looked at it, I wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe we're doing this. But you take this way, I don't want to say more seriously, but you're a steward of the history of it.
I admittedly stupidly care about this. I actually wish I didn't care about it as much, but I do think the history of the game is one of the things that makes it special. And the way the generations can be measured against each other in all these cool ways. I think it's what we lost in baseball to a big degree. It was one of the things we all loved about baseball. And in this case, I still don't understand the positionless argument because I do think the sport does have positions, right? Jokic is a little positionless. We have a couple players that we've never really seen people like them. Jokic is technically a center, but he also brings the ball up for them as a point guard, right? Magic, way back in the day, Magic wasn't really a point guard because on the other end, he always just guarded who the worst guy on the other team was, right? He wasn't. If he was guarding Isaiah Thomas, you were in trouble, right? They would go out of their way for that not to happen. So we've had positionless versions of what we're seeing now really for the last 40 years. I don't really feel like it's that different this year. Some of the stuff the Raptors are doing, Siakam's not a center, right? But they spent the first 50 games going super small and playing him at center. He technically could have been eligible at center for All-NBA. None of us feel like he's a center. So I get it. There's some tweaks. And maybe that's where you could have done the bigs and a guard and you could have made small ball centers like Siakam or other centers. And that's all one spot and really categorize it better for the voters. But they just got lazy with it. And now we're going to be in a situation where we're going to have some first team All-NBA that's got 1 forward and 4 guards, which I just think is fundamentally dumb.
If I'm the NBA, though, I'm like, didn't everybody want this? Because it felt like this is what everybody wanted.
Who's everybody?
I don't know. I haven't kept track of it. I got to write that list down. I got to update the everybody list.
I'm still waiting to meet somebody who was super upset about the first team All-NBA. Somebody in my life. Oh man, I still can't get over what happened to Embiid. The ignominy of him being on the second team All-NBA.
Actually, you could text him right now. You do have somebody in your life.
Well, he was the runner-up MVP. I would say that's more important than first team All-NBA. I don't know. It just feels very trophy culture to me.